I don't know if this is an appropriate song to be playing with an attorney coming on. Steve, I Fought the Law by The Clash, our artist of the day.
It's just the way that it popped up.
Yes,
you didn't have a hand in that?
I used their 3 most popular songs.
Do you want to share why today is...
Yes, this is an electric story before
This is why The Clash is artist of the day.
Okay, so Joe Strummer of The Clash ran the London Marathon, finishing with a time of 4 hours and 13 minutes. He claims he did no training except for drinking 10 pints of beer the night before.
That is a good story.
The comedian Bert Kreischer ran the L.A. Marathon with no training whatsoever either.
I don't know how anybody does that.
Yeah, even with training.
Yeah, that's crazy. All right, as promised, we go right back to our guest line to bring on Dan Greene, attorney at Newman and Lichtenstein, sports law professor at SUNY Cortland. Dan, thanks so much for coming on. How are you today?
Hey, guys. Thanks for having me. And once again, love the song choice. You can't go wrong with The Clash, either way.
All right. The whole Jesse Edwards thing, I'm sure you've been following it from down in Cortland of, what's going on. Did anything stick out to you that seemed fishy or is it just me that was like, how did West Virginia pop up this quickly and how did he know to have, doesn't it seem the way I look at it is, I don't know if you've seen the movie, what the heck is the name of the movie? Now I'm drawing a Goodfellas. When they did the heist of the airplane, the rule was don't act quickly when we get the money. Did any red flags stick up to you, like how quickly this all went down?
Right. I mean, first of all, I was very surprised. I'm a big Syracuse basketball fan. I went to SU Law. I bleed orange, the whole thing. I think everybody went into the off season thinking, if Jesse Edwards was going to leave, he would go pro, not transfer, and that all signs pointed to that. Considering, I think it was just a week before this all went down, people are, the word on the street was that Jesse was coming back, which was huge. And then this whole situation with NIL and the portal, and I think it caught everybody off guard. But I think something has to be said about Jesse didn't go right in the portal. It sounds like he was trying to work something out at SU for the past month or so, and we're about to wrap up year 2 of the NIL era, and West Virginia was ready for a situation where maybe an athlete out of school didn't particularly like the situation that they had, and they can pounce right in. You have to be proactive. You have to be prepared. You never know what's happening behind closed doors, what's going on with the agents or the school, the coaches, the parents. But West Virginia was prepared for this type of situation.
Dan, a common question we get is about the university's role. I'm not talking about specifically Syracuse University, but any university's role when it comes to NIL. And we know that NIL is not supposed to be part of recruiting, but we all know that it is. So can you kind of explain to our listeners what role the university can play when it comes to NIL? Can they, how can they quantify for a student athlete, whether it's someone already on the roster or somebody potentially coming in, this is how much you could make if you come to said school, this is how much you can make in NIL?
Right. So a lot of what the NIL era is right now, and, since the beginning, is kind of living in this gray area about what is permitted and what is not. And the NCAA, besides their, infractions against Miami basketball a few months ago, really hasn't been involved. And that infraction in itself was just quasi-NIL related. There are state laws on NIL, and some vary in regard to the issue. But you can't induce an athlete to come to your school or to stay enrolled at a school. And people out there listening might be thinking, well, that's clearly happening. I don't have any proof of it, but I understand why people think that. But what schools should be doing is making sure that they have an NIL program teed up and ready to go. And being able to, you can't tell a prospective athlete and be like, look, if you come here, we'll give you $1 million. But all you have to do is say is like, hey, look, this player on our roster, he made X amount of dollars last year. You're not telling them that that's what they're going to get, but you're telling them this is what potential is, and it really comes down to how it's said. You can also point to different collectives that may be associated with your, connected to your school. That's another big thing, because as we've seen, some of the most effective collectives out there in the NIL space are those that have at least some sort of line of communication with the powers within the athletics department. And you don't want to have any sort of rogue collective out there whatsoever. So it really is just being careful the way you say things and do things. But again, it really is some of a gray area, and it really just depends on how you talk about it.
You touched on it right there, Dan. I want to follow up on the collectives, though, in terms of, can you speak to the relationship that universities are allowed to have with these collectives, right? Because we had a caller call in earlier and say, are the teams at the mercy of, the collectives and which players they pay in terms of who makes up the roster? And obviously that's not the way it works. But how much can the coaches / university say to the collectives, like, we've got our eye on this guy, and this guy, can you go out and get them for? Like, what is the relationship between the universities and the collectives?
Again, it's tricky. A coach can't go to the collective and, in general terms, and be like, I want this guy, recruiting this guy, find a way to get him $1 million. That's not the way it works. Granted, you look at that situation in Miami with John Ruiz of Life Wallet, and him basically announcing Nigel Pack transferring over to Miami men's basketball. I would love to know how that all kind of worked out. And things are kind of working out that way. But I think at the end of the day, it's about being prepared and having that line of communication open between who's in charge on the inside and who's in charge on the outside, meaning the collective.
When you used that term about being prepared with the Jesse Edwards situation, do you think that's what the case was with Syracuse? Or do you think, this is free agency now, you're going to win some, you're going to lose some, when it comes to the people you want?
It's all speculation, but I mean, just looking at what Jesse Edwards said publicly, you can take that one way or the other. I mean, he said it, so you got to kind of take him at his word. I believe he told, was it ESPN, Syracuse is an organization that's into NIL, and he's not sure what their plan is or what their school's idea is behind it. I mean, my interpretation of that is that, I didn't go in the portal for a month. I understand that I have my visa issues, and I gave you a month, and it wasn't something that he think that was good enough for him. Meanwhile, you have a school like West Virginia in this situation that, they also have to deal with Jesse Edwards' F1 visa issue, and they were ready to rock within a few days, it seems like. I understand that the visa issues are tricky, and it's something that it's very difficult to understand for some people, and sometimes it takes a really seasoned immigration attorney to explain those nuances. But just based on the quotes that's out there in the public right now, I mean, Jesse Edwards' words, it's just not a great look for the university.
All right, I want to hit on another thing that's big surrounding the Syracuse University NIL situation. Is, say, hypothetically, you had a guy who had billions of dollars and he was an NIL, donator. Can where a university can't tell, how they're going to recruit, where they're going to recruit, can they tell a guy, we don't want your money, or is NIL between the players and the collective and the donor?
I mean, in your hypothetical, granted, the real purpose between what NIL is, it's name, image, and likeness. It's for athletes, college athletes who didn't have the right of publicity to get paid, to now get paid for the use of their name, image, and likeness, for their branding, for sponsorship, and everything like that. Of course, it's turned into a whole recruiting inducement sort of scenario, which was somewhat inevitable. But if a billionaire wants to pay a student athlete to promote their causes or their brands and whatever, like that's on them. And then granted that can't be an inducement for them to go to a certain school anyways. So it's really up to if on an individual billionaire's basis, whoever wants to take their money. I don't think the school has any really hand in that specific situation.
Dan, we're running short on time here, but is there anything that we didn't touch on that you think is important to get across to our listeners?
I mean, I think the whole situation, I saw some questions out there with Jesse Edwards' F1 visa issue. People are asking, wait, so West Virginia can get around it, but SU can't. The whole situation is that Jesse Edwards, like many student athletes in North America that are from different countries, they're here on F1 visas, meaning that they can only make money in a very specific situation. And that's basically in a way that's directly tied to their studies. However, some savvy agents, lawyers, athletic departments have found ways to get around that by having their athletes perform, work, and make money either in their home countries or in other countries that permit it in line with their visa laws. We saw Oscar Toshiba of Kentucky make a ton of money by doing deals in the Bahamas. We just saw the Center for UConn do the same thing. And I think in the world of hockey, you might see a lot of athletes are from Canada, and they can go home, go over the border, do their promotion, and they'll be able to make money that way. The only other real way athletes can make money here that are here on F1 visas is passively, which would be licensing your image to put you on trading cards or your name and number on the back of a jersey. I believe the jersey thing is something that Jesse Edwards actually did last year. Not sure if he made any money off of it, but I do recall seeing his jersey up in Marshall Street for sale somewhere.
All right, Dan. Really informative stuff. I feel like we could talk to you about this all day. Thanks so much for coming on. Enjoy your week, and hopefully we can talk about this again soon because it's a topic that's not going away.
Yeah, I love talking NIL, especially Syracuse, with anybody that's willing to listen and talk about it. So thanks again for having me, guys.
All right, there he is. Dan Greene, attorney at Newman and Lichtenstein, sports law professor at SUNY Cortland. We got to take a time out. John Muger from the TBT up next on ESPN Radio.